welcome to Seymour's World on ThinkTech Hawaii. First, I want to thank all of you who have written, texted, and emailed, and calling me asking what happened to Seymour's World. Frankly, I was and am very busy with my own business, global consulting company, and more important, my foundation. Now that I'm getting a little bit older, although I still feel like and play tennis and golf like I'm 50, if you believe me, I realize that my legacy is more important than my cars, my toys, etc. I'm concentrating on my family. My son Aaron is getting married this summer, and my foundation. Make 'em Smile now has 38 musicians playing for over 4,000 children at 8 hospitals every year. You Are in Charge helps foster kids in 8-week sessions see and reach the light at the end of the tunnel. My Holocaust lecture series allows me to speak to over 30 universities, schools, U.S. military, including Homeland Security, every year to talk about my mother's witness to horror in the Holocaust. By the way, her book, which is called Witness to Horror, is now available online, free, at www.annkazimirski.com. My mentoring program has helped 40 young business entrepreneurs start a business here in Hawaii, the US mainland, Europe, and Asia. So yes, I am very busy, but I love every minute of it. Also, I forgot to tell you, I was just selected by Kids Hurt 2 as Volunteer of the Year to be recognized here in Hawaii on December 4th. And yet, I still feel that I can do more, and I should do more. Thanks to Jay Fidel here at ThinkTech Hawaii, we will do 2 Seymour's Worlds every month, including my commentaries, whether you like them or not. So what's next on the agenda? Something that I feel we all need to be involved in one way or another. It touches me, you, members of your family, and your friends. It is a global epidemic, a plague of such vast proportions that the world is not able to handle it. It's called drug addiction. It kills more people than cancer and traffic deaths. It is in every community, even yours, whether you are rich or poor. It is indiscriminate and needs my and your attention. Hospitals all over the world are overwhelmed with patients who have overdosed or need drugs to feed their drug habit. Theft, prostitution, burglary have become the #1 method of getting the money for drugs. We need to be more proactive, and I intend to open up a drug rehab center here in Honolulu. It is a necessary and a crucial step in helping curb this problem. I don't have enough time to tell you about the plan, but the state of Hawaii has just given 3 licenses to produce and dispense medical marijuana. Whether you think this is a good or bad idea, I intend to have each of these licensees donate 5% of their revenues to our rehab center. I have the blessing of our governor and our mayor, and Dawn Ige, the wife of our governor, has personally offered to help us. This is going to happen, and if you know me, I will make it happen. Unfortunately, Hawaii is among the top 10 states for rates of current use of any illicit drug among those aged 12 and older. So we need to do this to help our sons, our daughters, our brothers, our sisters. All of the illegal drugs that are available on the mainland can also be found in the islands, with crystal methamphetamine, which is called ice, marijuana, cocaine, crack cocaine, heroin, and predatory drugs being the leading threats in our state. As a direct consequence of drug use, more people in Hawaii die from drug use than from motor vehicle accidents and firearms just last year. Perhaps the most important reason to quit using drugs is that it's a dead-end activity. The end result of addiction is either death, jail, or sobriety. Yes, it's tough to face the prospect of quitting drugs. The outcome of not making this choice is far, far worse. The answer for many people is to find a rehab program that offers a program with good result statistics and that aligns with one's own philosophy. Okay, now it's time for me to introduce my guests. It is my pleasure to have Aviva and Tosh Dutt on Seymour's World. Thank you very much for coming, you guys.
Thank you for
having us.
You're very welcome. I've known you, Aviva, for 20 years, and I've known Tosh for 10 years. And you guys are here to tell us about your addiction and what happened to you in the past, where you are today, and what you want to do in the future. So Aviva, why don't we start with you?
Okay. Again, thank you so much for having me here. It's something that is so near and dear to me that I would not normally talk publicly about this, but the fact that you're opening a rehab on this island that is so absolutely needed is really encouraging. And I do have a personal story with drug use and addiction. I grew up in a very middle upper class, normal-ish, what you'd call normal family in Minnesota. And after high school, I had, experimented a bit with marijuana in high school. And I sort of twist of fate happened to be somewhere, wrong place, wrong time, right place, right time, whichever, you would say. And I tried heroin when I was 17 years old. And from 17 until 21, it completely took over my entire life. It made my life a living hell. I had no more control over my life. The drug had complete control over my life. I tried many times during that period of time to get off the drug, to get sober. I tried myself to do it. I tried going into different rehabs, which did help for a time. And at that point, I lived in San Diego. And when I was looking for rehabilitation, there were many. I could choose between quite a few, and there were open availability. I had never had an issue with getting into a rehab. And when I was 21, I did get sober. I have stayed sober since then, so that will be 20 years this summer.
Wow.
I will have been clean and sober. And that process was absolutely life-changing. I am a member of a 12-step program, and that has continued to help my sobriety, mainly giving back and being of service. But interestingly enough, in the time that I have now been sober, I have come across, especially living on the island, people trying to get into rehab, people I've been trying to help, and the services on the island are not enough, and just lacking here. It's been quite a challenge. I've had people very, very close to me that I've tried to help, and when they are ready at that point, and when an addict or an alcoholic is at that point where they're ready, that's when you need to act. That's when they need to be able to get in somewhere, because sometimes that moment passes.
And yet we don't have, I know we have certain locations like Hinamauka and some other places that are out there, but they're so limited, and there's just, it's an impossibility, I understand, to get in.
It's limited, and also it depends on the type of drugs you're using. If, for instance, any kind of opiate, the only type of detox here is Castle Detox for opiates.
One detox for the whole?
There's one detox. I have personally taken a friend of mine many times to try to get in there, and many times she has been rejected and has nowhere to go at that point due to being filled to capacity there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tosh, let's hear your story.
Well, thanks for having me, Seymour, having us. My story is fairly similar to Aviva's. I was an athlete growing up, and started experimenting in college and drinking and smoking marijuana, and through my 20s, the ability to maintain that and have fun started to deteriorate, and my bottoms got worse, and I started to not able to function. And I've been out in treatment centers, different treatment centers on the mainland. I've been to the treatment centers here too as well. Like Aviva said, it's very challenging to get the kind of treatment or extensive treatment that one needs to be able to live life successfully, live a sober life successfully, and have a better chance at it. I think for me, what's changed is, you know, my psychic change, my outlook on life, you know, the fact that I'm conscious of the fact that I need to give back in order to stay sober and clean. And you know, my experience with 12-step programs has been pretty extensive, and it works. It works for me. And ultimately, you know, when an addict or an alcoholic reaches that point where they realize that they can't do it anymore, they need a solution and something to go to be able to have that psychic change and be able to change the way that they live. And that's essentially what happened to me.
Wow. Let me ask you something, Aviva. Public perception is that this is a behavioral issue. You know, you can stop. You know, you can just stop. Now, we all know from alcoholism, or we should know, that alcoholics can't just stop, and people who sometimes want to quit smoking can't just stop. Addiction is not just drugs and alcohol. It could be gambling. It could be all sorts of issues. What makes drugs so difficult to stop?
I don't know. I wish I had a magic answer I think that it's not just the physical addiction. I think people think of it as a physical addiction. You just stop using, that's absolutely it. There's a mental component to the addiction that you can't just stop. It's in your brain. I many times tried to get sober on my own, went through the process of actually detoxing off heroin on my own, which is a very difficult process. Just to start back on page one, having used again. And my parents one time asked me, how did this happen again? Like, how did this happen? And usually I had tons of excuses or reasons or whatever it was. And I just looked at them and I said, I don't know. And it was the most honest answer that I could give. I had no idea how I'd relapsed again, how I'd started back just where I had started.
Wow.
It just would happen over and over again. That's when I had said previously, it felt like it controlled me. I mean that mentally, physically, all the different ways that I was trying, everything, I would just end up back where I started and hating myself more than before. Wow. And not understanding and feeling like I would never get this. I was just someone that was destined for this. Didn't grow up that way, didn't seem like that. On the outside, I know I always appeared, even at that time, not to be what I was, and I felt like a fraud all of the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we have to go to a break, but before we go to break, I want you to know how proud I am of both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Seymour Kazimirski. I'm on Seymour's World at Think Tech Hawaii. We'll be back in a minute.
Hi, I'm Chris Leatham here with Think Tech Hawaii, and I invite you to watch my show, The Economy and You, each Wednesday at 3 o'clock here in Hawaii on OC 16. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Hello, I'm Crystal from Quack Talk. I've got a new show here. You've got to tune in, check out my topics on sensitive, provocative female issues. So, Tuesday mornings, 10 o'clock. Don't miss it. It's going to be fun and dangerous.
Aloha, my name is Josh Green. I host a show called Healthcare in Hawaii here on Think Tech. We get together once a week or sometimes twice a month. Depends when we're busy. We get together less often, but we love to see you here to talk about the preeminent healthcare issues in our state. Our programs vary very widely. We talk about economics, we talk about healthcare, we talk about social issues on this program. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, welcome back to Seymour's World. I'm Seymour Kazimirski on Think Tech Hawaii. We have started this season off, the summer season, with what I think is an issue that we have to face, and that is drug addiction. So, Tosh, I want to talk to you about it as a disease. A lot of people, you described it amazingly well, Aviva, about how you couldn't control it. There was no way for you to stop it. You just kept going down that path. Tosh, do you believe that it's a disease?
Yeah, I believe it's a disease. I believe that it's several things. You know, there's a physical addiction. It's a spiritual malady, and it's a perception of the mind. I think that certainly for me, it was very challenging to stop. I think that alcoholics and addicts think that they can do things on their own. We're very strong-willed and very, we like to feed our egos, and it takes a lot to get to the place where you need help, where you can even ask for help. And when I got to that place of saying, I can't do this, I don't want to do this anymore, I was able to get people around me and get the support that I needed, and follow a 12-step program to get me free from that perception of the mind and the spiritual malady. I think that it's the disease aspect is centers in our thinking. It's the way that we think about ourselves and other people, and it's we were talking outside here about the genetic aspect of it, and I think it's a combination of different things. There's socioeconomic factors. I think that there is a genetic predisposition, that follows lineage. But it's who's to say that you don't know if someone's going to be an alcoholic or an addict. And I certainly didn't know that. Growing up, I didn't think that was going to happen, but it did. And I think the biggest question that I asked myself is, well, what am I going to do about it? And how am I going to continue staying sober and living my life?
Let me try to perhaps help us understand why it's an epidemic. Everywhere I go, you can read in almost every single newspaper and every single day how many people are dying of heroin overdoses, how many people are going into drug rehab centers. Drug rehab centers they're being built all over the country. And it's not a big profit issue, it's for the community. Do you find Hawaii, I'll ask you, Aviva, do you find Hawaii needing a full-on rehab center, someplace that, especially kids, I think 18 to 25 is probably the range that we're going to target, that kids need a place where they can have a long-term program?
Absolutely, and especially in Hawaii, because there is nothing, especially that actually targets the ages that you were saying. People are so family-centered in Hawaii, and you need your family. And when you do try to get sober, many kids here get sent to the mainland. And so when you're sent to the mainland, your family's not around, and oftentimes a part of recovery is family counseling, doing the repair to the relationship that's very damaged, because drugs and alcohol do, as you mentioned earlier, the stealing, the lying, all the kinds of things that damage your family relationships need to get mended. And oftentimes that's done in a rehabilitation setting. But if your child is being sent to the mainland and you don't, and that's also very costly, and you are not able to go there and do all of the counseling there, it makes it even more difficult than having something here. And when you mention the disease aspect, I think it's really hard for people to understand that this is a disease. I think that it's really easy to look at someone that has cancer, that has a very, what you think of as a disease, and have a lot of sympathy and empathy. And I think that people look at this and they don't see a disease. And I, for a long time, didn't understand that it was a disease either. And I have really come over the years of working with people and seeing the situations to see that this is absolutely a disease. And like you said, like a huge epidemic, that the heroin has gone up in use much because of the prescribed drugs. So the Oxycontins and those kinds of things that get prescribed. It's cheaper once these people get addicted to then find street heroin, then continue on the prescription route.
Tosh, your story about what happened to you in the past and what are we going to do about it in the future is critical. Building a rehab center here, we have to look at all the other rehab centers and say, what do they do right and what do they do wrong? Mm-hmm. And one of the issues that I have, that nobody will work in this rehab center that is not an addict. Mm-hmm. You have to understand the exact mindset of of an addict to be able to work with addicts, because you have to assume that you're going to feel just like they are feeling today. You have felt that way before. I also believe in something that you said, Aviva, and that's a family center. You have to have a place where families can come, and it's too far away to go to Idaho or to California for most of the kids here. And the state of Hawaii, the city and county, the Hawaii Community Foundation, they all have to realize that we must do this because we're going to lose our kids. And they're going to be costing us a fortune in the long run.
Right.
So I want to have a family center tied into this. I want the program to be at least 6 months in which we teach vocation, whether it's electrical work, carpentry, anything that can help these kids move on with their life, because a lot of them will have stunted growths because of the addiction, correct?
Yeah, that's very correct. I mean, having a family-centric, so the disease just doesn't affect the alcoholic or the addict, it affects the whole family. And just one thing I'd like to add too is that, addiction and alcoholism is woven into the culture, the Hawaiian culture. It's often multi-generational. And that makes it really difficult to break the cycle, because when you see your parents or other family members engaging in the same behavior that you are, you're modeling after them, and it almost affirms that behavior or that way of living is correct. And so in order to break that, it's really important to bring in the family and let them realize that this isn't okay. It's not helping the addict that's trying to, or alcoholic that's trying to recover.
But it's the brothers, the sisters, the mothers, the fathers, the uncles, and the aunts that are part of it too.
Correct.
I feel very, very strongly that, and look, we have problems. We have homelessness. We have a rail who knows where it's going or where it's going to stop, actually. I mean, there are things that, we have sand eroding from the beaches. But what is the most important thing that our whole life is centered about? It's our kids.
Yes.
And if we don't take care of our kids and help them when they get into trouble, especially the juvenile side, then we're destined to live in a society where problems are going to be getting worse and worse and worse. Because addiction doesn't seem to be going away, does it, Aviva?
No, not at all. It does not. In fact, I was a nanny for a family of actually 18, 19 years. I've been their nanny. They're older now. That sounds like a funny amount of time to say that, but just within the family, one of the children has had a problem, and I have tried to help over the years, and being in Hawaii has been extremely difficult to get her the help that she needs. I have seen that, and I worry about it in terms of my own children, and I know if there's a genetic factor for our kids, then they have that genetic factor, and I would hope that there would be somewhere that they would be able to go to if they needed to get the help, because as I mentioned before, when you need the help, when you're ready, when it's that time and you're ready, you need to get in somewhere then. You can't wait. You can't go somewhere else. It's a really small window.
How difficult was it for you, Tosh?
It was very challenging. I mean, here in Hawaii to get the help that I needed. And, there's a lot of the facilities here, while they help a lot of people, they're not equipped to facilitate helping a large segment of the population, and also it's geared towards helping a very specific demographic. A lot of the treatment centers are state funded. They take in a lot of people from the correctional system, and also from the homeless population, and that's great. That's wonderful, but it makes it really difficult for other people to be able to get the help that they need. And like you said, it's difficult to do that when you're on the mainland and you're away from family. You don't have the support group that you do over here. They don't understand the culture and the way of living that we have.
I think just having this half hour with us talking together, it helps the audience understand how serious the problem really is. But the issue is, and I'm talking to all our viewers right now, The issue is not to just say, gee, this is terrible. The issue is, what do we do about it? And most of you who know me well know I'm a very, very proactive guy, and we are going to build this rehab center. And I just feel that for your sons, your daughters, your brothers and your sisters, it is imperative that you support it. And when it comes out in the print and on social media that Hawaii is going to have a rehab center, we need each and every one of you to do whatever you can to make sure that Hawaii has a first-class rehab center, one that can support kids for 6 months. It's going to be expensive, but I believe the issuance of those medical marijuana licenses is a godsend to us when it comes to finance, and we're going to ask every single one of them to participate in it. Whether you believe marijuana is a gateway drug or not, I think it's important to do it. Tosh and Aviva, I thank you so much. I had doubts when I asked you whether you would come on, because sharing your story is so difficult. And yet, I think every single one of us had tears in our eyes. It was just amazing. Now, of course, to see you so ready to tackle the future, and I understand you're moving to San Diego, and your kids are all healthy, and it's just wonderful. And it gives everybody an inspiration to be able to say, if these guys can do it, we can do it. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
having us.
Seymour.
To all of you out there, I'm glad to be back on Seymour's World. I'll see you in 2 weeks. I wish you all well. Thank you to Jay Fidel and to Zuri and everybody here. It's a pleasure to be back. Aloha.